Liz Truss thought by sacking me she would prolong her political life, but she resigned 6 days later, so that didn't work for her. And I think she went from quite overconfidence perhaps to terror-stricken panic.
Take us back. This time a year ago, you were just about to become Chancellor. What did you think was going to happen?
Well, I thought we were going to do something bold, which we did, and unfortunately, the market reaction was such that there was a lot of pressure on the gilt market. There was the whole LDI issue that we hadn't been cited on. And then about a month later, I was in Washington. I was called back. I was sacked. And I think the Prime Minister resigned 6 days after that.
Whose fault is it that it didn't pan out the way that you'd hoped?
Well, look,
this time
I'm not
last year?
playing the blame game. I mean, I take responsibility. I think there was too much too quickly. I think there was a rush. And also, what I do feel sad about is that there wasn't any real attempt to explain or hold the line. And I understand that people were under a lot of pressure. And after 7 weeks, the Prime Minister left and Rishi Sunak took over, I think, in October.
Was it a failure of politics then, rather than economics, do you think?
Well, look, I mean, we can have endless debates about the strategic goal. Looking back, I think that I still agree with the strategic goal. I think we should have a lower tax, lower spending. That was critically important. Political economy, if you like. But I think the staging and the process and also the messaging left a lot to be desired. And there were also other things going on in the international market, such as the Fed rapidly increasing rates.
OK, let's talk about where we are today then. One of the big questions right now is the government that, Tory party you're part of. It is handling over many years the question of dangerous concrete in public buildings.
Sure.
This is what Jeremy Hunt, your successor as Chancellor, said yesterday on the BBC.
What I want to say also as Chancellor to parents is that we will spend what it takes to sort out this problem. We will spend what it takes to make sure that children can go to school safely.
Do you think that, I mean, he's there promising to spend what it takes now. Would it have been better if you, previous chancellors, had spent the money in the first place, refurbishing and rebuilding schools?
I think hindsight is a beautiful thing. And you'll remember that as a consequence of COVID, the public finances were under a huge amount of pressure. I mean, the eye-watering amounts that were spent. And I know, having been there, I suppose, albeit briefly as Chancellor, but I was also PPS to the previous Chancellor. The officials will say, well, look, you got to spend hundreds of billions on COVID. So, our ability to spend on other things is going to be challenged. And as a consequence of that, I think decisions were taken. And now we are where we are, as they say. I think Jeremy's right. I think we've got to, it's something that is unacceptable. You can't have the prospect of buildings literally caving in on people. And I think he's right to say that, we'll spend whatever it takes to fix the problem.
Jonathan Slater, who was the top civil servant at the Department for Education, has been saying this morning the government had agreed to fund work on 100 schools a year to fix these crumbling concrete and other problems. But then a review by Rishi Sunak, when he was Chancellor, was carried out and the budget was cut to just 50 schools a year. Were you aware that had happened when you took over as Chancellor?
Well, I think there was a discussion about, and I remember at the time, even before I was the Chancellor, there was always a discussion about capital spend and how much you should be putting towards that. And I know that, as we all do, that in the COVID circumstances, literally the budget ballooned. I mean, there were hundreds of billions, billions, 300 billion, something like that was spent to intervene on that, and that's going to put a pressure on other spending. I mean, that's almost inevitable.
Some people listening to this will think, well, you found that money for COVID. And they appreciate that, whether it was the furlough scheme or the economic support or the health support and investment and so on. Why? Part of the problem is that Conservatives, including you want low tax, low public spending. And that has meant that there wasn't money to rebuild schools, rebuild hospitals, rebuild the road network, the courts. And we are reaping the consequences of that. The years of saying, no, we're not going to spend the money because we're a low tax, low spend Conservative government means that we're now putting up props in schools to stop the roof caving in.
Yeah, but we spent the money. I mean, it's not a question of the fact that we didn't spend money. I mean, when I came in 2010, we were spending something like £700 billion. And now that's gone up to more than £1 trillion. So to say that we've somehow cut spending in the round is just not the case.
So why is nothing working? We keep getting this, and it comes so in polling. The schools are falling down, hospitals are falling down, people can't get their operations. There's massive backlogs in the courts, in the prison. Why is this sense that people think that after 13 years of government, the country isn't working?
So I think, and I'll go back to this, I think the biggest thing that happened in terms of public finance was the COVID intervention. Okay, you've got to remember what that was. The whole economy essentially was in lockdown. Our society was in lockdown. And Rishi Sunak did the right thing. He intervened and spent literally 300 or 400 billion pounds purely on COVID support. And as a consequence of that, other bits of the budget were constrained. Now, when I was Chancellor, what I was trying to do was to get growth, because unless you get growth in the medium and longer term, we simply won't be able to afford any of the public services that our people have a right to expect. And that's the issue. And that was the whole debate that we had, and I think that we're taking a balanced approach. I think Labour are probably going to try and increase taxes because without growth, all you can do is simply increase taxes.
But the Conservatives have put up taxes. I mean, we're heading
for
that heist.
We have.
So your criticism of Labour putting up taxes doesn't really work, does it? Because you promised not to put up taxes, and you have.
No, I mean, it does work, because we can always say, it might sound like a weak argument, but it's still an argument, saying that they're going to put up taxes even more than we've had to, insofar as they're in their DNA. They are more prone and they are more willing to increase the tax burden. But you're quite right. We put up taxes because simply we put up spending. Liz Truss and I tried to get off that ramp. We tried to have a pro-growth, lower tax economy, and I think the market was concerned that we didn't have anything on the spending side, and that was something that we discussed as well. And I was hoping to introduce measures on the spending after the mini budget.
Do you think that the Conservative Party is in a significantly better position now than it was this time last year when you and Liz Truss were heading into government?
I think I mean, look, my view about last year's events is that I think it was a very difficult time. I think there was a bit of panic. And I mean, clearly, Liz Truss thought by sacking me, she would prolong her political life. But she resigned 6 days later. So that didn't work for her. And I think, she went from quite, overconfidence perhaps to terror-stricken panic looking back. And I was very upset to be dismissed. I think Rishi Sunak has done a good job in stabilizing things. I think it was very important that someone came in and, just in a way took the drama out of the soap opera of politics. I think he's done a good job in that. And now his challenge is to give a vision, as you've discussed, and a good, compelling reason as to why he and the party should be re-elected.
You mentioned that things didn't end well with Liz Truss. When was the last time you spoke to Liz Truss?
Oh, I spoke to her a few months ago, and I think she's been away. And I think she's doing her thing, making the case for free markets and lower taxes around the world.
Do you think that's in fact, we've just heard this morning she's going to make a speech in a couple of weeks in London, setting out her vision for how the government could enable the UK to achieve faster economic growth?
Well, growth is her thing, and that's something that we care very passionately about.
Is she a good advocate for it, though? Is she the right messenger for that message?
Well, I mean, no one's going to stop her, giving speeches, and if people want to listen to the speeches,
will you be listening?
That's up to them. I mean, I don't know anything about this. I don't even know what the day.
Well, do you think it would be better for the cause that you'd like to make, lower tax, lower spending, pro growth? Would it be better if we had a period of silence from Liz Truss rather than?
Well, no one's going to silence her. Okay, no one's going to. She is who she is. She's very dynamic, very outspoken.
Yeah.
And nobody. And I think it's free speech. You don't have to listen to her. One doesn't have to listen to her, but she's got every right to say what she wants to say and when.
We await her peerages list. Are you going to be on it? Are you heading to the
I don't
House of
think
Lords?
so. I don't think I'm on. I'm penciled in for that.
Do you think she should have? Do you think she should have that resignation honours list, given that she was only there for what 6 weeks?
7 weeks.
Yeah.
It's a tricky one. I think yes. I mean, I think it's very ungenerous to say, oh no, you did such a short time, you can't have any list whatsoever. And there were people that she wants to recognise. People who helped her in the campaign, people who helped her in government under extremely difficult circumstances, and that's up to her.
Just finally, before I let you go, we're looking ahead. We've got the party conference season coming, autumn statement, King's speech. We heard last week that actually the economy was doing better than we thought post COVID with the revisions from the ONS. Do you think there is scope for the sort of tax cuts that you announced last year in order to be reined back on? What's your message to Jeremy Hunt?
Well, look, I think his balanced approach is the right one. I think there has to be a systematic process behind this. And people, in the party say we've got to have tax cuts. We've got to have tax cuts. We've done that. They were unfunded, and the markets reacted the way they did. My preference now would be for some measure of spending restraint, which we've mentioned, allied with some measure of tax decreases, because we're not going to tax ourselves to prosperity.
Kwasi Kwarteng, really appreciate your time today. Former Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng joining us on Times Radio.